Today, we're going to talk about a topic, the many meanings of cultivation. A moment ago, I heard a rumor that a halo of multicolored light appeared in the sky here. Is that right? Many people saw it. Today, a halo appeared in the sky over the Tinai Lagoon area, Nan Hoi and Phuong Mai communes, right here at Hung Mai Pagoda. This heralds an auspicious sign. But the reason for such a sign is also to let us know that the abbot here is a good person, and the Buddhist followers here are also good people. When there are good people, the Buddha's protection will be present. And because the Buddha's protection is here, the human element becomes essential. For people to be good, and for the Buddha to always protect us, we must know how to cultivate. So today, we will discuss the meaning of this word, cultivate. It has many meanings, and we will now go through them one by one, so that each of us can look within and see which meaning of cultivation we have been following when we come to the pagoda. The first form of cultivation is to correct and improve our moral character. For example, there might be someone who was known for being fierce. Then, one day, the people in his hamlet notice he isn't fierce anymore and say, "Hey, why haven't I seen that fellow Namshin causing trouble lately?" Someone else might reply, "Oh, he's cultivating now. He's cultivating." That refers to a person who has corrected their destructive and fierce nature. People call that cultivating, even if they don't see him going to the pagoda to chant sutras or prostrate to the Buddha. Simply because he has changed his character, people praise him for having cultivated. That is the cultivation of correcting one's character. Or, for another example, someone might ask, "Hey, why haven't we seen Ms. Ba Tom around for so long?" And the answer is, "Oh, she has gone to cultivate." In this case, it doesn't mean she corrected her character, but that she has stepped into a completely different life, that of a nun. So you see, cultivation has many meanings. The first meaning, then, is to cultivate and correct our moral character. All of us must pass through this form of cultivation first, before we can aspire to anything higher or more sublime. This is the foundation. Everyone must go through this. Buddhist followers must cultivate their character. Monks and nuns must cultivate their character. Government officials and civil servants must also cultivate and correct their moral character. Everyone has to pass through this. Sometimes we call it self-improvement, other times cultivation and correction, or practice. But this meaning is the most fundamental. Whatever path of cultivation you follow, let's say someone goes up a mountain to cultivate, the crucial question remains, have they gone through the basic stage of correcting their moral character? Someone might say, "Oh, that man is now cultivating to become an immortal. He has gone into the mountains to practice for longevity." Or, "He's gone into a deep cave to meditate," or into the dense forest to practice mantras. But if he has not passed through the stage of correcting his moral character, then even if he uses talismans to perform magical transformations, he will only become a demon, never a deity or an immortal. One must first have moral character to become a divine being. This applies to everyone. Therefore, it must apply to each of us as well. So, what are the things we need to correct? The first is selfishness. Selfishness means we often live only for ourselves, think only of ourselves. When eating a bowl of rice, we want our portion to be bigger. When wearing a shirt, we want ours to be more beautiful. Seeing someone better off than us makes us uncomfortable. These are all expressions of selfishness. Only caring for oneself, only thinking of oneself without any thought for the community. When going to the pagoda, a selfish person will look for the best seat, the tastiest food. But a person who is not selfish will look to see what the pagoda needs, what it lacks. If they have money, they will offer it. If not, they will contribute their labor. They come to repair a pathway, rearrange some bricks, sweep the main hall, or carry water to fill the jars in the back. These are all expressions of altruism, not thinking of oneself, but of the pagoda and the many people who will come after them. Let me serve first. Or at a crowded festival like this, it is an opportunity to correct our selfish minds. Entering a large crowd, we might think, "Oh, it might rain. Food and water could run short. The restrooms will get dirty." A person practicing altruism will volunteer to handle these things first. They will go to the restrooms to clean and organize them, set up water for everyone to drink, and ask the abbot for permission to do various tasks to serve the many visitors. That is the practice of transforming selfishness into altruism. This applies to our villages as well. We take the morality we learn at the pagoda and bring it home, treating our families and neighbors with the same spirit. We learn to care for everyone, not just hoard things for ourselves and our family. To move from selfishness to altruism is the first, most fundamental cultivation. That's why if you've been going to the pagoda for many years, you must find a way to become less selfish. I often hear stories like this. There's a lady who has been going to the pagoda for 10 years, and when people ask about her, they say, "Oh my goodness, the more she goes to the pagoda, the fiercer she gets." Why? Because she goes to the pagoda, but she doesn't cultivate. Going to the pagoda is one thing. Cultivating is another. Cultivation means correcting the mind, transforming selfishness into altruism. As for that lady, I don't know what style of cultivation she's doing, but the more she goes, the fiercer she becomes, chillingly so. If you cross her, she'll snap right back. It was discovered that the more she went to the pagoda, the more she was nurturing her own selfishness. How? Every time she knelt before the Buddha, she would offer a small bunch of bananas but pray for a mountain of things. This time, please let me win the lottery. Please make me rich and no one else. Please make the abbot favor me and no one else. All her prayers were entirely selfish. After years of praying like that, she became super selfish. And once she became super selfish, no one could stand to be around her anymore. Therefore, to correct the selfish mind every day or every time we come to the pagoda, we should pray like this. May the Buddha protect me so that I may be free from selfishness. Please help me learn to love everyone, to care for everyone. May the blessings the Buddha bestows be for all people. I will be happy to just share in the good fortune. If you pray for everyone to be prosperous, you will naturally become prosperous too. But if you only pray for yourself to be rich, you might end up even poorer. So pray for everyone to be healthy, for everyone to be peaceful and happy, and your own selfish mind will dissolve. But if you just go in and pray, make my family rich, make my family healthy, let me win the lottery, your mind will be ruined. The longer you go to the pagoda like this, the more corrupt your mind becomes. Then people will slander the religion, saying, "What kind of faith is Buddhism, that the longer people follow it, the worse they become?" They don't realize it's our own mistake. The Buddha doesn't teach selfishness, but we keep praying selfishly. That's the first thing to correct. Or perhaps we have the karma of foul speech. Using profanity, swearing, speaking ill of others. To cultivate is to correct our mouths. What does that mean? It doesn't mean getting new teeth to look better. It means correcting the way we speak. The moment you open your mouth to criticize someone, stop. Praise them instead. The moment you intend to gossip about someone behind their back, stop. Praise them behind their back. If you're about to swear out of anger or habit, stop. Swearing pollutes the mind and the mouth. A person who constantly uses foul language will face consequences in the next life. If the karma is heavy, they may be reborn mute. If it's heavier still, they may not be reborn as a human at all, but only as an animal that howls and barks. Because when they were given a human life, they failed to use human speech for good. If the karma is lighter, they may be reborn human but with a speech impediment, or people will simply not trust their words. Everything they say will be met with dislike. Therefore, we must correct our verbal karma. A person who only speaks of good things, who sows the principles of love in the hearts of others, will receive immense blessings. We often think we must give money to become wealthy, but that's not the only way. Speaking words of truth and kindness, sharing goodness with others, and encouraging people to love one another. These actions also lead to the blessing of wealth. Or consider a person with an addiction. The most severe is drug addiction. Lighter forms include addiction to alcohol, gambling, or womanizing. The lightest might be smoking. To know how to cultivate means to correct and abandon these addictions. This is a monumental step forward in life. Because addiction is a habit born of selfishness and cruelty, we must remember that. A person who indulges in pleasure to the point of addiction becomes extremely cruel and selfish. We have all seen addicted children who beat their own parents to steal money and belongings for their next fix. How can a person become so cruel? It is because the addiction drives them to a state of ultimate selfishness. The same is true for alcoholics and gambling addicts. They disregard their family's well-being to satisfy their craving. An addict is a cruel person. If we are determined to cultivate and escape that addiction, it is a tremendous step forward, a great correction that moves the hearts of others and earns the love of the divine. Or, if we are greedy, we cultivate until we are no longer greedy and can open our hearts to give. If we are hot-tempered, always nagging and speaking harshly, we cultivate until we become gentle and speak with kindness. If we are prone to jealousy, we cultivate until we are compassionate and magnanimous. If we are arrogant and look down on others, we cultivate until we learn to respect people and see the good in them. These are all profound corrections of our moral character. There is one more: cruelty. Cruelty is a direct path to hell. What is cruelty? It is the willingness to inflict suffering on others without feeling any compassion. There is a heartbreaking story about this. At a ceremony for feeding hungry ghosts, there was a long ceremonial banner. Someone had spread a superstitious belief that owning a piece of this banner would ward off bad luck. This person then offered to buy the banner for 25 million VND. Immediately, a group of thugs showed up to snatch it. One man managed to grab the banner and tear off a piece. The thugs then beat him over the head with a square iron bar. He was rushed to the hospital covered in blood, and I believe he died. It's unimaginable. A wrong belief, combined with greed and cruelty, led them to kill. And for what? A small sum of money that would have to be split anyway. They took a human life for a superstition. That banner is now stained with blood. Whoever takes it home will find no luck, only more misfortune. It is love that brings good fortune, not violence. This is cruelty. We must cultivate ourselves to become people who protect the happiness and peace of others, not people who are cruel. That is the first meaning of cultivation, to correct our moral character. The second is, cultivation is transforming karma. This means that if we have created negative causes in past lives, resulting in poverty, ignorance, sickness, ugliness, or loneliness in this life, we now cultivate to change that karma. First, let's talk about poverty. If we find ourselves born into a difficult, impoverished life, it is due to some past karma. How do we cultivate to transform it? We begin to sow new, wholesome causes. We use money carefully, we help people in meaningful ways, we live simply ourselves but are always ready to sacrifice to help others. We use our minds, our words, and our labor to bring more joy and happiness into the world. If we cultivate like this for 5 years, our suffering will begin to lessen. After 10 years, our life will be stable. I sometimes meet people who come to the pagoda for 6 months and complain, "I've been cultivating for so long. Why am I still suffering?" I ask, "How long have you been cultivating?" 6 months. 6 months is nothing. Takes years. A person with a good heart who cultivates diligently for 3 years will begin to receive the blessing of having their small wishes fulfilled. After 10 years of dedicated practice, using money wisely, having a heart full of love, and being free of selfishness, they will find that their larger wishes also come true. This is how we transform the karma of poverty. This is called cultivation is transforming karma. Or perhaps we suffer from ignorance. We wonder, why am I not quick to learn? Or why does my child struggle in school? Or when we chant sutras at the pagoda, we forget them easily while others chant fluently. We listen to a Dharma talk, but if someone asks us what it was about afterward, we can't say. Did you hear the monk's talk? Yes. What did he say? You just scratch your head. Something about Buddha and cultivating. I've forgotten. If you forget the teachings, you cannot apply them. A poor memory is a heavy karma. It prevents us from cultivating and doing good for the world. So, we must transform the karma of ignorance. There are many ways. We can prostrate before the Buddha and repent. In the past, due to my ignorance, I created the karma that makes me dull-witted today. Please, Buddha, witness my repentance. Please protect me and guide me to sow wholesome new causes, to perform meritorious deeds, so that I may transform my mind and my karma. May I become bright and wise, able to understand the sutras and interact with people skillfully, bringing them joy and benefit. When we pray with such sincerity, our minds will gradually open. We will understand and remember the teachings more easily, and we will handle life's situations with greater wisdom. Over years of such practice, we will become progressively brighter, and may even avoid senility in old age because we have transformed the karma of ignorance. Or we may have the karma of sickness and ugliness. To transform this, we perform meritorious deeds like donating medicine, saving lives by releasing animals, paving roads, or building bridges. Gradually, we will become healthier and more beautiful, transforming the karma of ill health. Or we may suffer from loneliness with few friends or connections. This is a great misfortune, as it prevents us from helping others and spreading the Dharma. To transform this, we practice what is called forming wholesome connections with all beings. A person who, throughout their life, builds many positive relationships with others has a great blessing. This blessing resides not in wood or stone, but in living beings. To form these wholesome connections is to practice the way of a Bodhisattva. Or perhaps we live in a negative environment, a place of war and destruction, or a neighborhood filled with crime and addiction. This is also the result of past karma. To transform it, we can practice vegetarianism, save lives, and encourage others to do the same. By cultivating peace, we will naturally change our circumstances. Either the community around us will improve, or we will find ourselves able to move to a more peaceful place. There are people who have the blessing of living in peace, even in a country at war. The conflict never reaches their small corner of the world. This is the result of past good deeds. If we find ourselves in a bad environment, we must cultivate to transform that karma. The third meaning of cultivation, which is a bit higher, is spiritual cultivation. This is when we begin to engage with sacred concepts, prayer, rituals, and a connection to the divine, to deities, saints, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. For example, you might see a man who is rarely home but often goes up a nearby mountain. People say, he's cultivating. You don't see him actively correcting his character or transforming his karma. You just see him go every afternoon to a small cave with an old altar, where he kneels and prays. He is seeking a connection with the spiritual world. We also call this cultivating. And over time, people begin to feel a sense of awe and respect for him, wondering what sacred power he might be attaining. This is the third meaning, entering the sacred spiritual path. This path has two aspects, the external and the internal. The external aspect involves relying on the power of an outside force, a deity, a Buddha, a saint, or even a spirit, to grant abilities. For example, someone who chants mantras for a long time might suddenly become spiritually sensitive, able to know things as if someone were whispering in their ear. Or they might be able to bless a glass of water to cure illness. This is also a form of cultivation, but it depends on who the external force is. If the help comes from the Buddha, we are safe, as long as we remain humble and attribute any success to the Buddha's protection, not our own power. If we become arrogant, our minds will be ruined. However, there are dangerous paths. There are those who practice a type of black magic known as Tian Lin Kai, or ghost child magic. I once met a blind man who was living a miserable life, supported by his long-suffering wife. He was fierce and abusive, and she seemed bound to him by some karmic debt. I learned his story from someone who knew him in Cambodia. In his youth, he practiced this dark art. He seduced a young woman and got her pregnant. When the fetus was 7 or 8 months old, he lured her into the forest, tied her to a tree while she was still alive, and used a bamboo knife to cut the baby from her womb, leaving her to die. He took the fetus home, dried it, and performed rituals on it until its spirit became his servant, whispering secrets in his ear. For a time, he became rich and famous because he could predict the future accurately. But when his merit ran out, his karma came due. He became blind, destitute, and wretched. This is also a form of spiritual practice, but one that uses an evil force with evil intentions, leading to a terrible end. This is why, as Buddhists, we rely on the protection of the Buddha. But even then, we must remain humble. The internal aspect is when spiritual power arises from within, through our own efforts. It comes from accumulating merit through good deeds, keeping the precepts, and, most importantly, meditation. When the mind becomes pure and tranquil in meditation, spiritual faculties begin to awaken. The first ability is knowing things beyond the normal senses. Later, one might develop the power to influence the karma of others. However, if this power is used too early, before the ego is dissolved, it can lead to madness. That is why the Buddha forbade his disciples from casually displaying supernatural powers. The ego flares up, and the mind breaks. I knew of a monk who cultivated diligently on a mountain and developed the ability to know exactly when visitors were coming. He would always go down to greet them before they arrived, and when they asked how he knew, he would boast, "I know everything. The moment you decide to come, I am aware." Everyone was impressed. But 1 year later, he went completely insane and died. It was all because of showing off. This is why only an arhat, a fully enlightened being who has realized selflessness, can safely use such powers. When necessary for the sake of others, an arhat can fly, pass through solid objects, or walk on water, because there is no I or self taking credit for the act. But when such displays are not needed, they live like a perfectly ordinary person. In Buddhism, the ultimate goal of spiritual cultivation must always be liberation and enlightenment. What is liberation? It is freeing ourselves from the painful cycle of birth and death. In this life, we are born, we struggle to make a living, we have families, we grow old, and we die. Then we are reborn, and the cycle repeats. If we could remember just 10 of our past lives, we would be terrified by the endless, repetitive suffering. We would desperately seek a way out. And what is enlightenment? It is waking up from our delusion. We are ignorant of what is right and wrong, of the vastness of the universe, of the law of cause and effect that governs all things. To seek enlightenment is to seek the wisdom to see things as they truly are, to know the path that leads out of suffering. This is the highest aim of spiritual cultivation. The fourth meaning of cultivation is to live the life of a monastic, a renunciant. This is like the example of Ms. Ba Tom, who went to cultivate. This means she changed her life completely. She renounced her family, worldly pleasures, and personal freedom to live in a pagoda, bound by precepts and discipline. A person who does this sincerely is worthy of the highest respect. We lay people can enjoy whatever we want. A monastic cannot. They eat only prescribed foods. At night, while we might go out for entertainment, they stay in the pagoda to chant and meditate. Their lives are dedicated to spiritual practice, aiming for liberation and directed by a heart of love for all living beings. If a monastic cultivates truly, they are deeply admirable. The only tragedy is when someone takes the robes but does not live the life, secretly indulging in worldly things, remaining selfish, and failing to love all beings. That person bears a heavy sin. But to be considered a true monastic, for conditions must be met. Appearance. They must have a shaved head and wear the proper monastic robes. Virtue. They must have good moral conduct. If they have the appearance but lack the virtue, they are not a true monk. We must be firm on this. We respect the robes, but only when the person wearing them has virtue. A root master. They must have been ordained by a teacher who is part of an unbroken lineage tracing back to the Buddha himself. No one can simply shave their own head, put on robes, and declare themselves a monk. This tradition ensures the authentic transmission of the Dharma. Legality. They must be officially recognized by the Buddhist Sangha, church body, and the state. This legal status ensures order and accountability. When someone fulfills these conditions and renounces the world, they immediately stand in a noble position. Even if they came from a poor or humble background, the moment they put on the robes, They are loved and respected, for they have joined the lineage of the holy ones. But is the path smooth from there? No. That is when the real challenges begin. The value of a monastic's life is measured by how they face these trials. Someone will inevitably criticize you. Do you get sad? If no one criticizes you, the Dharma protectors, guardian spirits of the faith, will arrange for someone to do so. This isn't a punishment. It's a lesson. If you cultivate for years and everyone only praises you, you will never make progress. Therefore, if a cultivator says, "I'm so tired of all the problems here. I'm going to find a quiet hut to live in," they are a deserter, not a cultivator. If you fail to solve the problem of sadness, more sadness will come, again and again, until you either give up or you conquer it. Your heart must become like a mountain, unshakable. When you have passed that test, a higher one will come. People will stop scolding you. They might even plot to harm you. At that point, you must protect yourself, but without a trace of hatred in your heart for the one who wishes you ill. This is the next lesson. A monastic's life is a series of such lessons. And when these challenges come, know this. It is a sign that the heavens and Buddhas love you and are paying attention to you. If your life as a cultivator is perfectly smooth, it means no one is watching over you. So, from now on, do not be sad when you face adversity. It is a sign you are loved. The fifth meaning of cultivation is to practice the Bodhisattva path. This is a vast and immense undertaking. It is a path of boundless compassion, where one chooses to remain in the cycle of birth and death, life after life, for the sole purpose of benefiting all living beings. A bodhisattva's work is endless, could be as small as picking up a nail on the road to prevent injury, or as large as mediating a war. The core of this practice is to form wholesome connections with all beings and bring them limitless benefit. On this path, time loses its meaning. When we hear the Buddha predict that a certain person will become a Buddha after 3 million eons, we might feel daunted. But for a bodhisattva, 3 million or 3 billion eons are nothing, because they no longer operate within the confines of time. There is a unique aspect to this path called the adversarial bodhisattva practice. This involves manifesting a firm, punishing, and sometimes fierce demeanor to stop evil. For instance, if we are listening to the Dharma peacefully and a violent person with a knife rushes in to attack people, will gentle words stop them? My friend, you will reap the karma you sow. No, there is no time. At that moment, a strong person must intervene, disarm the attacker, subdue them, and hand them over to the authorities. These urgent situations require an adversarial approach. A bodhisattva who can use this path is of a high level. A beginner cannot. A beginner bodhisattva typically uses only gentleness. But a high-level bodhisattva, while normally compassionate and gentle, can manifest a terrifying authority when needed to make evil recoil. We even have legends of bodhisattvas manifesting as great kings, leading armies into battle. This might seem contradictory. How can a compassionate bodhisattva be a warrior who kills? But we cannot always fathom the workings of the bodhisattva path. Some speculate that Genghis Khan, who rose from the steppes to build a vast empire, was in fact an adversarial bodhisattva. His conquests broke the back of invading forces that were brutally imposing their own religion, thereby saving the Buddhist cultures of Asia. Was he a conqueror driven by ambition, or an emanation of a bodhisattva who took up the sword to stop a greater evil? We cannot know for sure, but the theory exists. This is why in our temples we worship the Dharma protectors. One might look beautiful and majestic, clad in armor. Another, the wrathful guardian Tu Dayin, looks like a demon with bulging eyes and a lolling tongue. But who is this fierce figure? He is actually an emanation of Bodhisattva Guanyin, Avalokiteshvara, whom we often worship as a gentle mother. Those two figures are one and the same. To follow the Buddhist path means to understand this. We are sometimes as gentle as the earth, and at other times, we must be as fierce as a typhoon to sweep away evil that sweet words cannot stop. In each of us, we have the gentleness of Mother Guanyin, but we must also have the firmness of a Dharma protector to defend the right. A bodhisattva who practices both the gentle and adversarial paths over many lifetimes will become a great bodhisattva of immense power, able to help countless beings just by the invocation of their name. And one day, such a bodhisattva will attain perfect Buddhahood. So, we have discussed 5 meanings of cultivation: to correct our moral character, to transform our karma, to undertake spiritual cultivation, to live the monastic life, to practice the bodhisattva path. But regardless of the path, the ultimate goal must always be liberation and enlightenment. We should not pray for temporary rewards. Even becoming the ruler of the world is temporary. The Buddha himself said he had been a world-ruling monarch in past lives, but it all passed away. Bodhisattvas see this impermanence clearly. Everything ends. Only liberation is eternal. The Buddha's final words still echo for us today. All worldly things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence for your liberation. Our cultivation is also not done alone. We practice with our Dharma brothers and sisters. This gives rise to a special kind of love, a spiritual bond we call Tao Tin. In our families, we have family love. At school, we have friendships. For our country, we have patriotism. But when we come to the path of cultivation, we develop this Tao Tin, our spiritual connection. We must cherish this bond. When we sit here together in this Dharma hall, we may be strangers by blood, but because we have come together to bow before the Buddha, an invisible sacred thread has been woven between us. To disrespect this bond is to create heavy negative karma for ourselves, leading to loneliness and obstacles in future lives. To honor it, we must love, help, and support one another on the path. We must sow only seeds of love, never seeds of hatred or gossip. If we sow love, we will receive love wherever we go, and we will be reborn in realms of love. Do not be foolish enough to hate one another or speak ill of each other. Cherish this invisible sacred bond. We must also protect each other's cultivation. If you see a Dharma friend becoming lazy, remind them. If you see them violating the precepts or falling into anger, advise them. If there is an opportunity for a meritorious deed, invite them to join. If someone from the outside tries to sow discord or lure a friend away from the path, we must prevent it. We must be the guardians of our spiritual family's unity. Finally, the last meaning of cultivation is to train the next generation. Monks and nuns must guide new people to join the monastic path. Lay followers must bring their children and grandchildren to the pagoda, teaching them how to pray, chant, and understand the Dharma. We must establish ethics classes for the youth. We must teach them from a young age to be diligent, to sit in meditation, and to do good deeds so that they will have blessings and success in their lives. We who know how to cultivate have a responsibility to pass it on. Now, to answer a question from the audience. We are people of the sea. We also want to cultivate and find peace by keeping the precepts. However, our livelihood depends on catching fish, which is an act of killing. For us, what should we do to avoid the negative karma? This is a very delicate and practical question. Who here is a fisherman? Please raise your hand. Thank you. You catch fish to sell them, correct? And who buys them? People who want to eat them. Now, if nobody bought the fish, would you still catch them? No, you would find another livelihood. So, because people eat, you must fish. Whose karma is it? It is shared by both. It is true that when we take a life, we create negative karma. There is no denying it. But it's not so simple. There is a balancing of karma. Let me explain. First, the person who eats the fish shares a large part of your karma. But because you are the one who catches it, you also bear a part. That is only fair. But the karma also depends on what happens next. What does the person who eats the fish do with the energy they gain? If they get strength from the fish and then go out and fight, swear, or gamble, their sin is compounded, and your share of the negative karma also becomes heavier because you provided the fuel. However, if they eat the fish and then, with that strength, they go out and do good in the world, if they are a doctor who heals the sick, a teacher who educates children, a worker who builds society, or an official who serves the people, then you also share in the merit they create. Therefore, A fisherman has an even greater responsibility to spread the Dharma than others. When you sell your fish, you should also give the customer a book on Buddhist teachings, on the law of cause and effect. Encourage them to take refuge and keep the precepts, to ensure that after they eat, they will do good deeds. This way, you help society and you also increase your own merit. Furthermore, what do you do with the money you earn? If you use it for gambling or drinking, your sin is compounded. But if you use that money to support your family and use the surplus to do good deeds, for example, donating to help build this pagoda, then the merit from that act helps to lighten your karma from fishing. This very pagoda was built in part with money from the sea. Because of this pagoda, countless people can come to practice, and the merit generated here helps to greatly reduce the collective negative karma. Finally, consider the life of a fish. An ordinary fish lives a life without higher purpose. Cannot learn, it cannot do good deeds, it cannot know the Dharma. Its life is reactive and brief. Perhaps the greatest merit a fish can attain is to offer its body as food for a higher being, like a human who can practice the Dharma. If the person who eats it does good, the fish shares in that merit and may be reborn in a higher state. The sin is incurred in the pain and terror of the fish at the moment of its death. That karmic debt is shared by the fisherman, by the consumer, and even through donations by the community at Hung Mai Pagoda. So, for now, while this is your livelihood, you must do it. But we can also hope that one day, science will create sustainable lab-grown fish. Then, people could still enjoy healthy food without any killing involved, and you could work in those new industries. Until that day comes, we continue to do our best, and we must continue to come to the pagoda to cultivate. I wish everyone great health, peace, happiness, and diligent practice. And remember to cherish that deep spiritual bond between us. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.